Oh, hello. I am editing and realized I never actually filmed an intro to this video. So today we are doing Trying a New Author, which is a new video concept I have where basically I try a new author with you guys. And the first author I have picked to do this with is Attica Locke. I decided to do it now because it is Black-A-Weenathon happening all throughout the month of October. And I feel like Attica Locke is a recommendation I've gotten from Bree several times, so felt like the right time to do this. Also, hello Hastings. So without further ado, let's jump to the footage. I'm on my lunch break, so I am about to order the Attica Locke books. I'm literally trying to find some Post-its to stack you up on so you can actually see me in frame. Okay, so we are about to do some research on Attica Locke, because while I definitely have had her recommended to me, I don't remember them. So let's go to Goodreads and see what all she has done, shall we? Also, I'm on my lunch break, so you may hear the soft chime of Teams chats pinging in the background. So anyway, okay, so Attica Locke. Now, I know one book I definitely want to include is The Cutting Season, because I know that I want to say the two that I can kind of remember Bree specifically calling out were The Cutting Season, and I want to say Bluebird. So, okay, The Cutting Season is the American South in the 21st century, a plantation owned for generations. Okay. So Karen is a manager of this historic plantation, and eventually it seems like there's a dead body that turns up on the plantation. And let's see. And Karen keeps uncovering things she will wish she didn't know. As she's drawn into the dead girl story, she makes shattering discoveries about the future of Bellevue, the secrets of its past, and sees, more clearly than ever, that Bellevue, its beauty, is not to be trusted. Okay, so that does sound interesting to me, just as a concept, so even aside from having in my mind that this was one that people had recommended to me, this also just sounds like one I would like. Okay, so then, let's see here. I think... Okay, Bluebird is the first book in a series, so that makes sense to also pick, because I kind of remember that one being recommended. Let's see here. When it comes to Law & Order, East Texas plays by its own rules, a fact that Darren Matthews of Black Texas Rangers knows all too well. Okay, he goes home. He goes to the small town of Lark, where two murders, a black lawyer from Chicago and a local white woman, have stirred up a hornet's nest of resentment. So this sounds, okay, it's called a rural noir. Now, noir is not always my thing, but I'm willing to try. And if Attica Locke is as good of an author as everybody has led me to believe, I probably won't hate it, even if it doesn't end up being my favorite. Okay, so that's two. I feel like three books is the right scope for this. And okay, she has one other series called the J. Porter series, and the first book in that is called Blackwater Rising. So this is a lawyer. He runs his fledgling law practice out of a dingy strip mall. Ooh, carefully tucking away his darkest sins, the guns, the FBI file, and the trial that nearly destroyed him. And okay, so he's in Houston in 1981. He impulsively saves a drowning woman's life and opens up Pandora's box. Okay. So, again, I don't know that this necessarily would be one that I would seek out, but I am very intrigued to try her. So basically what I'm thinking is that we are going to have two series that I'm starting, or at least trying, which is going to throw my stats for my series check-in into chaos, but that's fine. So I'm going to start two series, and then I'm going to read this standalone, which is The Cutting Season. So I feel like between those three books, I'll have a pretty good sense of what Attica Locke is about, and if her stuff is for me. So let's see what we can do. I'll check in with you guys once the books start rolling in. Alrighty, so we have read all the books officially. We have read, I read them in order of publication so I could get a sense of the journey. So I want to talk both about Attica Locke in general, because that's kind of the whole idea behind this video. But first let's do like just kind of a quickish book review for each of these. So first of all, happy to report, enjoyed all 3 of these books. I will say my main kind of finding is that maybe her type of book is just not my personal favorite, but I gave each of these, well, now they're all on the ground. Hold please. Okay, sorry. So I gave each of these at least 3.5 stars. So first of all, I would say my least favorite probably is the first book I read, though I did give it 3.5 stars. This is about a man who is sort of like a seedy, down on his luck kind of lawyer in early 1980s Houston. He and his wife are out on a date and she is great with child, and this woman kind of like crashes into their dinner because she was like, they're out on this like kind of dinky little boat and somebody's trying to kill her, someone tries to drown her, they save her, and he gets sort of embroiled into this whole like kind of political plot about corrupt local politicians, including his ex, who is the mayor, and like big oil. That's kind of the overall plot, trying to figure out what happened to her and why. So this is really slow burn, and I think too long. I think the reason this is my least favorite of the 3 is that it's the longest, and I think her stuff works better when it's a little shorter. It's a very slow burn, but the writing is just, like, I want to use the word juicy. Like, I could feel the oppressive, sticky heat of Houston. The setting, I feel like, was so evocative. And once it kind of gets some steam going on the plot, I think it is a pretty satisfying sort of political suspense, maybe. The book this actually reminds me of is sort of like a Grisham, like the Pelican Brief, especially because of that sort of oil connection there. So, and you know, Louisiana / Houston, like, I don't know, I felt like it's kind of in that vein, but it's a lot, all 3 of these books are a lot about race and a lot about systematic oppression, both of Black people, but then also like macro level oppressive forces, in this case, big oil. So yeah, I liked this. I believe that there's a sequel, but I don't think I liked it enough to read the sequel. But I enjoyed kind of at this point a historic setting, and just, I don't know, this was kind of Grisham-esque, but better writing might be the way I would pitch this one. Then the next one I read was The Cutting Season, which I would say is my favorite because I think that this is the closest to a true mystery thriller, which is really where my genre interests are most aligned. The setup for this one is this old plantation that our main character works on, and her mother worked there, and her family kind of goes all the way back to the days of enslavement. So like her ancestors were enslaved on this plantation, but now she's sort of like the manager. There's a body that is found, which is one of the day workers, like an immigrant worker population, murdered from the plantation's fields, which are being sublet to this big corporation. So again, very slow burn, but I felt like had a little bit more of a typical mystery plot, and therefore it worked better for me. It felt more like a typical, like it was closer to a mystery thriller kind of plot, pacing, etc. This one is definitely my favorite. It's a 4 verging on a 4.5, like a very, very strong 4. I think, again, some of the character motivations I wasn't totally sold on. I will say the book that this kind of reminded me a little bit of was All Her Little Secrets. Actually, both this one and Bluebird in some ways reminded me of that, because our main character makes bad decisions and doesn't tell people things because of her own little secrets. So if that bothers you in a main character, Just know that. That seems to be a thing Attica Locke really likes to do. Keep jumping ahead to like kind of a meta-analysis. But anyway, so just in general, I really liked, again, the plantation itself was so evocatively described. It felt like another main character, basically. And I really liked kind of the course of the mystery and sort of how that ended up. So this was my favorite of the three. And then I would say Bluebird, it's kind of, I just realized, sort of a fusion between Blackwater Rising and The Cutting Season, because the main character reminds me quite a bit of the main character in The Cutting Season in terms of like secrets from the past. It is a dude this time, and he is some semi-disgraced or like on leave or whatever Texas Ranger, trying to decide if he's going to go back. In this, he's back kind of in his hometown, small town. And then the plot, I felt like, was much more in the vein of Blackwater Rising, except this time a lot of it has to do with like white nationalism, like the Klan, that kind of vibe. That's sort of what the big force is. Yeah, this one, he's like trying to prove somebody didn't do something. And this one, I'm between a 3.5 and a 4. I think I would ultimately settle on a 3.5, just because when we get to the meta bit, I'll talk about kind of where I'm at with Attica Locke in general. It's not quite my genre combination, like my preferred genre blend, but as well written as The Cutting Season, like I would say it's clear that her writing continues to be just fantastic and gets better and better. Another very slow burn, takes a long time to get going, and I loved the ending of this one. The ending almost makes me give it a 4, because I really liked where this ended up. I thought it was like dark and kind of like very poetic in some ways, and sort of like darkly ironic. I don't know. I really like the ending of this one. And I will say, people have recommended to me before to do the audio, and I could 100% see that being a good route to go with Attica Locke because of how strong her writing is. And I could see with a good narrator, just the lushness, the juiciness, the just like evocativeness of the setting and the writing could probably be like bumped up even more. So I gave 3.5, 4, 3.5. This one's a solid 3.5. This one in a different day, or sort of with like a few different things, could have been a 4.5. And this on a different day could have been a 4. So I definitely enjoyed all of these, and potentially would read more from Attica Locke. But here's sort of where I'm at in terms of like what I think her vibe is, what her strengths are, and kind of who I would recommend her to. So Attica Locke, I think things that are great about her books. First of all, I love the writing. The writing is beautiful, and it's poetic or sort of lyrical without being super flowery. Like there's a couple of moments of that, but in general, I wouldn't describe her as sort of like an overly descriptive writer or anything like that. I think that she's just really good at being careful with her word choice and really painting a beautiful picture with her words, particularly settings. I think that her true strength is describing settings. More so, I would say, than even character work. I think that her settings are really fantastically described. So I really like that. I really love the themes of her writing. Like she's clearly very interested in themes of sort of like oppression and how the criminal justice system is set up, particularly against Black people in America. But even beyond that, I think, you know, like I'm thinking about in The Cutting Season, there's a lot in there about big farming and kind of how that impacts different communities. And, you know, she has a lot of big ideas, and they're ideas that I'm interested in, and I think they're ideas that she explores in interesting ways. Particularly The Cutting Season, I know I said it was my favorite just in terms of tropes, but I also just think it's a super thoughtful kind of consideration of the relationship between plantations, which are basically these sites of like genocide, really, and certainly, if nothing else, like mass cruelty, mass death, mass oppression. Like they're these sites that really represent like some of the darkest parts of American history, and yet they're like places where people go on field trips, and they're places where people have weddings, and it's just like this complete kind of dichotomy between the sort of potential romanticized vision of the past and the reality of what these farms with enslaved labor mean, or like what was actually going on in these places. So I think that that particular book really explores some of that without, she doesn't have a lot of textual discussion of themes. I think that the way she kind of weaves her plots and settings and sort of set pieces allows for a lot of rumination on the subtext. So, I mean, I'm not saying that there's no discussion, but I think a different author could take some of these topics that she's exploring and be a lot more sort of like textually didactic about them, which I can be on board with, more so in a speculative world, but I really like the way she addresses these things, which is there's a lot of nuance. Like, these are all books that you could totally, I mean, I could totally see somebody writing a college paper about one of these books and talking about her use of symbolism, imagery, or motifs to kind of get at what she's trying to talk about thematically. So like, I also think that these could be really good book club books because there's a lot to discuss. So I really like both of those. I think my main issue with her, well, like, let's say just something neutral, which is that I think that these are very slow burning books. If you're looking for like an action-packed thriller, I don't think that these are books for you. So like, that's just a neutral, like, that's something that some people want and some people don't want, and some people want in some books and not others. Like, that's just a part of kind of what her project is. For me, I saw either on the back of one of these books or when I was looking something up on Goodreads or whatever, somebody described these as rural noir. And that is exactly what I think the genre that she's mainly working in is, or at least appears to be. These are basically noir books, but not set in your typical sort of urban setting. They're in these sort of rural southern communities. And I am just not a noir kind of gal normally. These are some of the most successful outings I've had with something very noir flavored in a long time. That is usually just not my trope set, because it's noir both in its sort of depiction of the human condition, but also in its tone, what happens with the characters, all of that. That's just not normally my favorite. Like, these are not fun books in the way that I normally go to a mystery thriller for, because there's just a lot going on. Another author who comes to mind for me as a comparison is Tana French. Like, I think that these are literary noir. Like, literary rural noir tackling themes around Black oppression. Like, that is what I would describe her project as, basically, which I'm on board with as a thing. And I'm really glad. I will say, I don't know that I would have continued on with her if I had just read one of these. So I'm actually very glad that this project kind of made me do a big read of her at once, because now I could see myself picking up another book from her depending on what the description of the book was. But I think that these are not fun books necessarily, but they're very well crafted literary noir books that are tackling important topics. So if that's what you're in the mood for, I mean, she is great at that. I just don't know that that's like a project that is super something that I'm reaching for all that often, but I'm glad that I read her and read several of her books at one time, because I could see a world where I read, for instance, just Bluebird, and came to the conclusion of like, oh, you know, I think that these are just not quite what I'm reaching for when I'm in the mood for mystery thrillers, so I guess this just isn't totally for me. I think reading it in conjunction with the other two so quickly, like back to back to back, made me realize that she does have things in her writing that do connect with me, even more so than what any one of these books does. So I could see myself picking up more from her if it was the right description on the back of the book, and then I would know to pick it up when I was kind of more in the mood for something a little bit more literary and less just like fun. So I do think that I have a much better sense of who she is. Would I read more from her? Yes. Is she a new all-time favorite author? No, but she is definitely an author I have like very deep appreciation for now. I think she's very talented, and I know that she has a good amount of success. I mean, like several, like this is a national bestseller, best novel, Edgar Award winner, the LA Times best book. Like, I know she has gotten a lot of sort of prize or best of recognition, but I don't know that she's a huge bestseller. And I think that she deserves to be just as big of a bestseller as someone like a Tana French. Like, she's incredibly talented. So I would really recommend her to people who are attracted. If you were attracted to anything that I said while I was discussing these individual books, or while I was discussing her as an author and kind of what her project is, highly recommend her, because I think that seems to be, in my view at least, underhyped among readers, as opposed to sort of like critics. Does that make sense? So I would definitely recommend her, and please pick something up from her because I think she seems doesn't get as much love now that I've read a little bit more of this than I think she deserves. Frankly, I enjoyed all of these more than I've enjoyed most of what I've read from Tana French. So if that tells you anything. So anyway, I think that this was a really successful try an author project. I would definitely do this again. Let me know if you liked this as a video format. I think I enjoyed making it, so I would definitely be open to doing it again with a different author. I think that I was correct in picking an author who had several books that were kind of on my radar. So it would need to be an author that I have not read anything from before, and an author who I have several books that are on my radar to make it a full video. So I'm not sure exactly who that would be. I would have said Neil Gaiman, but I've now read a Neil Gaiman, so I can't really do that. But anyway, let me know if you're interested in this or if you have suggestions for other authors I could do this kind of format with. And yeah, I think that will do it for me for now. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon.